May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. It seems particularly easy, especially in times of uncertainty. We don't necessarily know exactly what is going to happen in the near or the far future. When things seem to be somewhat up in the air in many circumstances and situations in our lives and our world. When things could really come down badly in chaos, or maybe they might be okay. It is easy to fall into the misconception that we are insignificant, that we are tiny, that we don't matter, that what we do in an effort to be a part of God's dreams for the world, God's hope for the world, God's compassion for all people and creation, God's love, is futile and has no effect. Of course, every once in a while, the church has a job to state the obvious. And this is one of those times, I suppose, if you are feeling that way. That is a lie. It is not true. It is a lie from the nether pit of hell. Because we believe that Jesus is risen from the dead. Therefore, goodness is stronger than evil, love is stronger than hate, light is stronger than darkness, life is stronger than death. That the foundation of reality is God's laughter and not cynicism. That our destiny is God's joy and not the grave. And for this reason, God works through you and me, every one of us, how you are, who you are, what you are. And when God works through you as we are trying to be what God desires us to be, what God created us to be, when we are seeking to have the hope of God, to have the courage of God, to have the love of God in our lives, then God will do through you wonders. Wonders. For example, in our second lesson for today in the book of Acts. Now, Acts is kind of a book of the Bible to tell us what happens after Jesus is risen from the dead, because Jesus is risen from the dead, hallelujah, it's wonderful, and now we're all going to sit on our hands, right? We're all going to sit on our hands and wait for heaven. No, heaven is far more active and powerful and hopeful. Heaven breaks into this world. Yes, God brings us into heaven after we die, most surely, but heaven also brings itself. God brings heaven into this earth right now, through you and me. And Acts talks about how this happens. And one of the ways this happens is by pushing our boundaries. And another way that this happens is by us being who we are and what God has given us to be and to do. So Peter, in the second lesson for today, Peter is the man. Peter is the big man. He is the dude. He is the leader of the church. He is the rock, as Jesus has said. Now, we have not heard so much from Mary the Tower since Easter Day, even though what she says is fully sufficient for a lifetime of reflection. I haven't heard so much from Mary Magdalene, but we've been hearing from Peter lately at this point in Acts. Peter is the man. And in the verses immediately before our second lesson for today, Peter heals a man named Aeneas who is paralyzed, heals him. Aeneas has been paralyzed for years, and Peter says, Jesus Christ heals you. The guy gets up and he starts walking around. Everyone is amazed. People join the church. It's marvelous. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. Yes, it is. Also, you need to know Peter is wrong. Peter is wrong. So is everybody else, just about almost everybody else in the early church at this point. That's okay. Don't worry. Let's everybody relax. We're all wrong too. Let's just kind of, all right. We may not know in what ways we are wrong. Sometimes we do. But we may not know always the ways in which we are wrong. It's okay, because God always comes to us. We don't go to God. God always comes to us, no matter how wrong we might be. Peter is wrong. The early church is wrong, because they are operating still at this point in the book of Acts under the assumption that Jesus has come as the Jewish Messiah to an oppressed and downtrodden people, certainly, but that Jesus is basically for them and not so much for everybody else. Like for you and me, not so much. For the Jewish nation, for the Jewish people, for my nation, my people, my language, my culture, my heritage, that's who Jesus has come for. And God has been pushing the church for a while now. Because Philip, one of the people that's not really a big dude, is not very much in power. He's a deacon. He's not one of the top tier guys. But Philip has run off, and he has been preaching Jesus to the Samaritans. Now, the Samaritans were kind of Jewish, but not really. They were half Jewish in culture, half Jewish in heritage. We will, in our gracious compassion, we will allow them to be a part of our Christian community. In our goodness, we will make room for these poor, benighted Samaritans to be a part of our church. Yes, God is pushing the church. God always pushes the church. God pushes you and me to the edges of our comfort zone, to the edges of our familiarity. This is what God does. Philip has even hopped over the edge of our comfort zone, or at least Peter's comfort zone, in that he has baptized the Ethiopian official, a high official in the court of Queen Candace of Ethiopia. He doesn't even have any Jewish heritage from that part of the world. He's not even part of that part of the world. He does follow Jewish laws. He does worship the God of the Jews. But he is from way over there in Africa, way up high in the court and the power life of ancient Ethiopia. This guy is different. Philip, one of those people that kind of pushes beyond. Now Peter is here in Lydda, and he gets a knock on the door. There are two men there. They say, please come quickly, because Tabitha has died. Actually, it's Tabitha or Dorcas. You can call her either one, because that's her name. She has two names, Tabitha and Dorcas. They both mean the same thing. They both mean gazelle. Isn't that a pretty name? I can just kind of imagine the way she moves, with this grace and the lithe beauty of a gazelle. Gazelle has died. And when somebody that is dear to a friend dies, you go, right? You go and you be with them. When somebody is in grief, when a relationship breaks, when even a dear pet dies, you go. But Peter goes. Tabitha has two names. The first is this, Tabitha. It's in Aramaic, the language of Aramaic, which was Jesus' mother tongue. It was the language that Peter spoke, and Mary Magdalene spoke, and Joanna and Susanna and all those other folks spoke, the language of ancient Judea. It is a descendant of ancient Hebrew. It's kind of like Spanish is a descendant of Latin. Okay, this is what they spoke. And if you were from that part of the world and you were from that culture, you would speak Aramaic. Tabitha. She has another name, Dorcas. Means same thing, gazelle, in Greek. And What is weird is there were two groups in the early church. There were the people who spoke Aramaic, whose heritage was from ancient Judea or Galilee or around there, and whose customs and culture and dress and behavior was like that. And then there were the people who spoke Greek. They were still Jewish, but they were from parts of the empire that had Jewish people in them for centuries, like Alexandria or maybe Babylon, other places. And they spoke Greek. They dressed like Greek people. They acted like Greek people. They were from a Greek culture. There were these two different cultures in the church, in the early church. They were still wrong. They still thought Jesus was the Messiah just for them, but two different cultures. And they'd even come into conflict. Early in the book of Acts, the people who were taking care of widows in the Aramaic-speaking group in the church, the Greek-speaking folks came and said, they're getting more money than we are. They're getting more attention than we are. You know, conflict over money in the church? Yeah. See, here's the thing. We are not God. The church is not God. God works through the church, even though we are very, very human. Conflict. Gazelle's very identity, her name, crossed those boundaries, crossed those divides. It's likely she knew both languages. It is possible that she may have made clothes for both groups. You know, when you have clothes, they encompass your body. In those days, clothes were far more expensive and difficult to make than they are nowadays. But you might know the person who made your clothes. You know the person who made your clothes? Do we know their names? Do we know how they're doing? How's their family? Are they being treated well? Do they make enough money to make ends meet? How's it going with them? Gazelle made clothes. Those clothes, the thread was spun by hand, the fabric was woven by hand, the fabric was sewed by hand. It was what God had given her to do. You know, if she gave you clothes, those were her hands around you. Those were her hands covering your body, her hands keeping you warm, this temple of the Holy Spirit that is so much of what we are. It is that kind of connection, that kind of human connection. Whatever we are given to do, whether we're a sewer or a cooker or an accountant or a businessman or a teacher, whatever we are, when we do that with the love of God, then those boundaries are crossed and those divides are brought together, and now God's dreams come true. God's dreams come true. We get pushed. So Gazelle dies. And you know what happens in a community when somebody beloved to the community dies? You are broken. You are distraught. You are in pain. And you need the people who are important to you to come and to be there. Just to be there. And so they send for Peter, say, could you come quickly? And Peter goes. I don't even know whether he knew what was going to happen. I don't even know whether he had in his mind what he was about to do. You just go when your people need you. And he is there with them. They show him the clothes. They weep. He puts everybody out of the room. He kneels down by the bed. He prays. He looks over and he says, Tabitha, get up. She opens her eyes. She sits up. Peter's boundaries have been pushed. He has never raised anybody back from the dead before. And now here he is in this situation, and it happens, which is to say that the power of God moving through you reaches beyond death. You may not be able to raise a dead corpse up from the ground. I don't know. It's happened in other places, but not so much in our culture. You hear things, but the power of God reaches beyond death, all kinds of death. And that's not why I told you the story. I told you the story is now Peter has ended up in Joppa, and he ends up staying with a person named Simon the Tanner. Simon the Tanner is beyond God, beyond the area of familiarity. Simon the Tanner is an unclean person. He deals with the dead bodies of animals, and he stinks because of the chemicals he uses to process the leather. Peter is out at the very edge of his boundary zone, and now God is going to go, bing! He's going to be flying right on over to the other side. Because next week we will hear about this. God says to him, not just your country, not just your nation, not just your culture, not just your language, not just you, but everyone Jesus is for. Everyone, the grace of God is for everyone. This is a major earthquake in the thinking of the church, in the thinking of the people. And it's come about because Gazelle was herself. And she did what God had given her to do in her community. Don't ever think that what you do is insignificant. Don't ever think that you are of no use. Live in the hope of God. Act on the courage of God. Show the love of God. Who you are, as you are, God will push us to our boundaries, the boundaries of love, and God will change the world through us. Thanks be to God.